Hello, this is the Convo Guy here. Today I wish to discuss a Bible character that I can relate to and a Bible character that I wish to be like. So here we go. A Bible character that I could relate to is Jacob. Jacob was the son of Isaac and Rebekah. We all know the beef that Jacob had with his twin brother. I just like how Jacob feared returning back to the land of Canaan. I found Jacob's story amazing because he knew to cling to God when his life was in trouble. He felt like his twin brother was going to come for his life, even potentially kill him. But he was planning on clinging on to God for him to have that blessing before he was going to encounter his twin brother after 20 years of them being apart from each other. It was God's will for Jacob to return to the land that was promised to him. At the time, Jacob had a tribe of his own. He was living with his father in law, Laban, and Laban was finessing Jacob, but Jacob was also finessing back. And at the time, having two wives and multiple kids with both wives, he felt that it was time for him to return back home. After all, God told him to return back, so there wasn't a choice that he had. He had to. Jacob starts tweaking, separates his family because he felt like it was his sole purpose to meet his twin brother by himself. An angel of God encounters Jacob, and Jacob starts wrestling with this angel of God. Him wrestling with God wasn't him being disobedient. I like how Jacob's purpose was meant to get a blessing from this supernatural being. I like how he just clung to this being for him to be blessed because he just didn't know how his twin brother was going to react. This angel of God does bless Jacob. After a long time of them wrestling, both brothers end up encountering each other and there was peace between the two of them. Why do I feel like I relate to Jacob? Because I can be, I mean, to each its own. But me personally, I feel like I have finessing like abilities. I can be a manipulator. I could be, you could tell me one thing and I could do the opposite. And based on what you tell me, I could switch your words around and make it seem like you told me this, even though I know directly what someone has told me. So I feel like upon reading Jacob's story in the Old Testament, I just like how he had a fight in him. Like he was always able to trick you just with something. You tell him this, he'll do this. A master finesser. He was able to finesse his brother by acquiring the birthright, even though Isaac wanted to give the birthright to the older twin brother. Because the older twin brother, he knew how to fish, he knew how to hunt, he was very skillful. Jacob was more of a house type of guy, but somehow he just ends up having authority. And I think God even told Rebecca, as both brothers were in the womb, that the older will bow down to the younger. So Jacob's story I relate to because throughout college I always found a way to get an A. I'll find a way to get an A, B plus, just finding people that just had previous exams to the same class that I was taking. And that was me throughout college, literally for the 4 years. If you know me, you know that this is what I did. I'll find people that took the class, I'll ask them to give me the resources rather than studying the textbook. I will just study the previous exams to the same class I'm doing. Not a lot of people did this, but I just had that finesse like ability. When was my surrendering moment? I would surrender when I knew I was in deep trouble. Again, doing this for 4 years, and now you graduate, you're out here in the real world now. So now you can't finesse the real world. You know, it wasn't as lucrative as how I once had it during those college days. A couple years after realizing that I got this degree and what do I really do with it? Realizing that there was nowhere to turn to, that's when I turned to God. That's when I start praying and realizing that my life is ultimately at a blockade and I can't finesse myself out of a situation that I put myself in. Again, I chose the degree, but yet I'm finessing these classes. And now that I graduate, I'm out here in the real world. I'm stuck. So that's when I decided to start praying and reading the Bible. And when I came upon Jacob's story, I realized that I'm just not the only one. That he was one of the first individuals in the Bible that was able to use his mouth, to use his skill set to his advantage of getting himself places. Of course, he already had the blessing from God because he was part of Abraham's descendants. So he was already blessed. But then you add the finessing like abilities. That's a surprise to me. I'm like, whoa, God already has you blessed. God is going to look out for you because you're already Abraham's grandson. Then he starts finessing despite him already being blessed. It's like, whoa, that's something you don't see every day. So upon reading his story, I'm like, wow, like Jacob, I'm not saying I'm like a Jacob. I'm saying I can relate to him. Jacob is doing all this finessing until he realizes that it's not you finessing. It's just life allowed you to finesse. You can't finesse God. So when he had to return back home and encounter his brother, you can't finesse out of this one. So that was God telling him, you have to, you're forced to go back home. So God basically set it up that way for him to surrender. I feel like Jacob's story is meaningful to me because I can relate to it. I can read his story any time of the day because it always has purpose. You know, this is a sibling that wanted him dead, but at the end of the day, there was peace among them. So it just shows you that if you turn your life to God, any situation, he would mold and make it a blessing, even if that situation is the worst of the worst.